Shun Mira is the right-hand man to the King of Evil. He's someone who possesses a power so catastrophic that it breathes fear across the nation. Never once having to question his actions, he continued to live up to his moniker. That is, until he falls head over heels for Byakuya Mimori, an overworked girl in her 20s who is forced to become a magical girl. This is Katsute Mahou Shoujo to Akuwa Tekitai Shiteita, or the magical girl and the evil lieutenant used to be archenemies. The anime is a wonderfully and gorgeously realized story that consistently manages to be funny, sweet, and dramatic. It's a perfect adaptation of its source material. The manga, having begun serialization in 2013, abruptly ended in 2015. Its author, Kokowa Fujiwara, tragically passed away. Losing anyone hurts, and while I'm not going to pretend I know anything about her, I'd like to think that this adaptation was made to celebrate her final moments, to pay a creative memorial for her works. But the anime is still relatively niche despite its circumstances. I'd understand if the work in question wasn't anything special, but this anime is special, and here's exactly why. The anime and manga are a forbidden love story, a subgenre of romance about two people who are deemed incompatible by society, yet choose to stick to their convictions and seek connection regardless of their social pressures. Many anime and manga have found ways of causing a rift between characters, whether it's the tension caused by animal urges in B-stars, or the social statuses of different schools we see in Karohana. Archenemies uses heroes and villains for their example. Shun is undeniably evil. Having been raised under it, he uses his powers to cause harm. Byakuya, meanwhile, is heroic. She uses her powers to save lives. Of course, the story would be incredibly jarring if the characters stuck purely to that black and white description, which is why their circumstances are more complicated. Byakuya isn't a magical girl because she wants to be. She was forced into it by an angel, a mascot-looking being with the mannerisms of a Yakuza member. As a result, all of her good deeds are done against her own will, and she's being overexerted to please an abusive asshole. Shun, meanwhile, may have done evil things, but his love for Byakuya leads him to question his loyalty to the evil organization. These are both troubled people burdened with expectations of who they should be. While Byakuya spends the story accepting this, Shun is in denial of how much his fate traps him. This is the premise of the anime and manga. It's a heavy idea, as it is with most forbidden love stories, but what I love so much about this one is that these characters don't let their heavy atmosphere weigh them down. They've both grown up around so much abuse that they don't stop to worry about the ramifications of being found out together. In a world where their happiness is so limited, it's simply fun for them to interact and tell jokes. That's why the first few episodes and chapters are focused on nothing more than their comedic banter, of Shun getting flustered at every turn and Byakuya not noticing a hint of it due to her innocent personality. With comedy as a big focus, I think the anime in particular shines so brightly due to Shun's incredible voice acting, his exaggerated line delivery being the tipping point to making these jokes so funny. Despite this, little bits of drama are still drip-fed throughout their comedic escapades, as Shun will do things that tip the lines of what his organization deems acceptable, since protecting Byakuya's happiness becomes more important to him than anything else. Each chapter has him save her in one way or another, whether it's from slime monsters he's created or getting exploited by her boss. Regardless, a lot of Shun's motivations are still concealed. It's unclear why he's scared of angering the organization, whether it's because he's starting to regret his actions or because his romantic feelings won't be accepted by the evil organization. I personally think it's the latter, more selfish reason, as redeeming a character like Shun is naturally going to take a lot of time. But there's one episode and chapter that further leads me to think this way, and acts as the tipping point of the story. Suspecting something, the organization captures Byakuya without Shun's influence. This episode does such a great job with these characters, Byakuya accepting defeat while Shun desperately tries to let her escape. Byakuya is visibly confused by Shun's actions. Her life has lacked so much happiness that she fails to see the value in it, and yet Shun still sees something in her. What I love so much about Shun's response to her questioning is that he still manages to be genuine despite not confessing his love.
サンバーさん、なんて助けて。
君の初めから諦めがちな姿勢は好ましくない。君はもっと望むべきだ。
It's a great quote because of its subtext. While he may literally be saying that he wants a stronger opponent, what he actually means is that he wants her to love herself the same way he loves her. Even though he hasn't disavowed the evil organization, Shun carries himself with a genuine kindness and care that makes him very easy to root for. And I think this quote is the true start of that journey for him. Moments like this are what I love Forbidden Loves for. Shun may not be able to express himself fully, but that desire is clear. Their love is real. But not everyone is going to accept that. Neither the villains nor the heroes. An angel falls from the heavens, causing conflict. Yet another person to be partnered with a magical girl, it's his goal to dismantle Byakuya and Shun's relationship. Hibana Kagari is a girl with pure and innocent intentions, but also with a foul mouth and violent tendencies. Before this can be known, however, Shun attempts a murder on Hibana. Thinking he's won, he spends the rest of his day shrouded in a guilt he'd never felt up to that point. Confused with his feelings, he confronts Byakuya to tell her the truth of the matter. Byakuya, however, is just excited to see him. Given her inability to see the value of her life, she sees his murder as something that can't overwrite everything good he's done for her.
私、白状なんでしょうか。
違う。これは君が。
In the anime, this line is nothing more than comfort. I vastly prefer the manga's version of the scene where Shun says that she is heartless, yet still hugs her regardless. This line is so good because of how it acknowledges his guilt, and because he always wants to be honest with her despite his love. It's a great scene for him that, in my opinion, the anime failed to capture as strongly. Hibana's still alive, by the way. Accompanied by her angel, he misunderstands Byakuya and Shun's relationship, using it as the reason for being against her. The idea that she could be in love never crossed her mind, even though he's all over it. This is the moment where she finally has to consider her feelings, and where she has to face pushback from her own organization in order to accept them. For as much as I love the story, I think now's around the time where I should critique it. I think the most obvious flaw is a side effect of how short the manga is. Hibana was a character I was really excited to see since she's really funny, but that's all it comes down to. I'm fine with characters like Fomalhaut and Bellatrix being gag characters since their plot relevance either doesn't exist or is implied to exist much later into the story. The reason why it's so jarring with Hibana is because the chapters introducing her are huge bombshells that are supposed to change the story in a major way. It's why it's so baffling when the status quo seems to be pretty much back to normal afterward. There may be some noticeable differences in the ways Shun and Byakuya interact, but since nothing plot-focused happens with that, I still felt disappointed in these chapters. It sucks too because these chapters are still very funny and charming, yet it almost feels like they should have been placed earlier. Hibana and her angel don't appear again for another 5 chapters, only to be used in a gag chapter and never used again. I'd like to think they would have been more important later on, but ultimately, I can only go off of what we got. To me though, the biggest issue is with the paneling of the manga. It's very simple, similar to a 4-koma, with 4 panels per page on average. This makes the read uninteresting from a presentation standpoint, and the lack of backgrounds really don't help. Thankfully, these issues are slowly remedied and improved upon by the end of the manga, the reading feeling much smoother as a result. However, that doesn't stop the beginning of the manga from being much harder to get through. Granted, there's also the possibility that I've been spoiled rotten, as the anime adaptation is very much the definitive way to experience the story. I could go on forever, but so I don't bore you, I'll just compare the first 3 pages. The manga start is fine, but it's hard to really feel the extent of Shun's evil with just his smile across a flaming city. The anime improves upon this by establishing the scene before his evil takeover. In the first chapter, we're only told about how overworked Byakuya is, but the anime fixes this by showing her at one of her jobs. It's a really simple addition, but it adds so much. When Shun finally summons the dragon to take over the city, we see the chaos of it more clearly through the pedestrian perspective, making it much easier to truly feel how much of a threat he is. While it's not story related, the dragon's blue flames were an excellent visual change which helps complement Byakuya's appearance tremendously. That was all just 1 page, by the way, and yet it doesn't end there. The anime also adds in an extremely well animated transformation sequence that they predictably reuse in as many episodes as they can. And before they skip to the encounter, we actually get to see Byakuya's powers on display, destroying the dragon like it was nothing. All of this doesn't exist in the manga, not in the first or second page, and it's all built up to in order to make the twist reveal of Shun's lovey-dovey personality hit all the harder. The love at first sight scene is shown on page 3, and it's nothing special due to its rushed build-up. The anime earns this moment, so it commits with confidence. Shun's glasses break not just in 1 angle, but 3, as the once blank background is filled with a heart-shaped amusement park ride and close-ups of their faces. Shun overcome with affection for the girl he just met. I say all of this not to discredit the manga. The anime is only as good as it is because it has the story of the manga to pull from. It's an adaptation that exists as a love letter for her legacy. These are animators who love the manga and respect the story it told while using their skills to elevate it to new heights. The manga is great in its own right, but the extra push given by its adaptation is what allows it to truly stand out. All of that gets tested in the ending. Having finally run out of options, Byakuya's been captured. Shun may have chosen her a lively cell, yet she's still trapped. While Shun's supposed to torture her into information about the angels before sending her to a coworker, he couldn't be more conflicted. Backed against the wall, letting her escape now would be the final nail to his credibility. His failures to catch Byakuya and kill Hibana have put him in a position where he chooses to finally put an end to their relationship. While Shun's trapped in his denial, it's Byakuya that says the most surprising thing of all. For all of the series, she never cared about her fate. She never cared about her life, and yet she doesn't want to give herself away when she finally has something to live for. Those simple, almost fillerish chapters beforehand meant something to her. Those were her learning that she really does love Shun. It's why she won't let herself be killed. Thankfully for her, she doesn't need to get violent. She's so adorable that Shun comedically fails to get anything out of her for several chapters. And the story just ends. In the middle of such an important arc, the story just ends. Out of curiosity, perhaps looking for answers, I checked Kokowa Fujiwara's Twitter account, and her last few tweets are genuinely heartbreaking, knowing what would happen to her 6 days later. It's been a long time. Actually, I'm moving the day after tomorrow, so my private life has been hectic. However, Joker is out now. This month, it's all about evil organizations. Even though she doesn't make many appearances, the popular Spy Sachan has made quite a few appearances. Thank you very much for your comments. I will not reply for a while, but I read them carefully. This is my parents' house. It was a frighteningly rural place, but the scenery was beautiful. I'll be saying goodbye to this place the day after tomorrow. It's very likely that she knew her final moments were awaiting her, as while the final chapter wasn't intended to be the final chapter, it was still called the final chapter. The manga wasn't cancelled, it was concluded. And while its conclusion left a lot to be desired, the story we got was one I loved, despite the many issues I had with it. Kokowa Fujiwara may not be here with us anymore, but her manga always will be. Whether it was the people who knew her from Inu X Boku SS, or the people such as myself who recently discovered her work, she will forever be remembered. When I first returned to this YouTube channel, it was to ask why we create. I'm someone who frequently questions what the point of my work is, and every time I think I've found the answer, I manage to slip back into another slump. My initial answer is that creativity is fueled by relationships, the lesson that Show Me Your Love taught me. This continues to reign true, and yet I still managed to fall once more when my latest video flopped, counter to the massive success of what came before. This fear that I'm a one-trick pony, that people will never care about me, managed to persist. That was until I took a look into Kokowa Fujiwara's life. This is someone who likely knew that she'd never get to see her story to the end, that she'd never be able to receive the praise given to her work after her passing, and yet she persisted despite that. The strength needed to put yourself out there despite such circumstances is so commendable that I feel like a fool for wanting to give up something that I genuinely love doing just because of YouTube's fickle system. Truly great creatives don't create to please other people. They create to please themselves, because creative works are supposed to be the extension of the self. Reading Archenemies is a way of reading into the life that led her to write the story. Most writers write what they know, which ultimately means diving deep into the self. For one example, my story is filled entirely with characters who have traits stemming from my own. With each character arc, I'm calling out and critiquing myself, growing with the flawed cast I've crafted. Not every story is as ingrained to a writer's identity as mine, but with the knowledge of her circumstances, the story gains all the more meaning. Byakuya is someone who lives every day like it could be her last, and her character arc is about learning to understand the things that matter to her. The scene where Byakuya says she wants to spend more time with Shun, to me, can also be read as the mangaka's saying that she doesn't want to die just yet. Such an interpretation is very likely a stretch, but it helps give more meaning to her work. It transforms the manga from just another forbidden love story to an effort to put her passion project to life for as long as she has left. When read this way, it almost doesn't matter how many plot points went unanswered. This panel, to me, is the true thematic ending of the magical girl and evil lieutenant used to be archenemies. For those of you who didn't know, this video is a re-upload caused by a copyright takedown. While this is very annoying, it does give me the opportunity to discuss the rest of the anime adaptation, which hadn't aired when I first uploaded this video. After episode 7, the anime makes the bold choice of creating original episodes, albeit with some parts of the manga intact. For the most part, these are very good episodes, maintaining the charm of the first half. They're funny, wholesome, and give that heartwarming feeling. These episodes also give us more screen time for the evil organization and Hibana, which helps give the cast more things to do when the manga couldn't make as much time for them. They also give spotlight to new characters, like Spica, who I enjoyed in the anime but thought was uninteresting in the manga. One thing to note though is that despite how much I enjoyed these episodes, I also think they don't do much of anything to advance the plot, themes, and conflict of the series. I think the animation team was too scared to take the story in a direction that Fujiwara could have disapproved of, which is why the status quo gets maintained for the rest of the anime. As a result, I do genuinely think that the adaptation ended up being weaker than it could have been. But that won't stop me from having an attachment to it due to having made this video. In any case, I really don't know what else the adaptation could have done given how limited its short episode format is. As a result, having it end with the status quo maintained, no confessions, and no resistance, I think was as good of a job as the anime could have done. The ending may be underwhelming, but it's not like the manga wasn't either. Ultimately, both of them preach enjoying the journey over the destination, and this has been one hell of a journey for me. I'm really happy with the way this video turned out. While I have some doubts on the script, this is by far the most fun I've ever had with editing. This is my first time ever using anime footage for a video, and while I assumed the process would be tedious and boring, the reality couldn't have turned out more different. I felt so free with the possibilities that the gorgeous adaptation brought for the video. It made it easier to go for a more cinematic presentation to match my writing style, allowed me to play clips to show evidence of my points, and the footage is just generally more appealing than still manga pages. I still wanted to highlight the manga, however, as it's a very worthwhile read despite how good the adaptation is. I'm sure that the anime will have to skip some stuff to get to the ending, so I think both versions are worth your time, even if the anime is much more appealing to start off with. I think the story is truly excellent, even if it has some flaws, and my love for it kept growing with time. It already started as a passion project, since it's rare that I find such a gem in a given season, but the process of creating it only made me more passionate for what I was making. It's why, above all else, I hope that you can appreciate the story as much as I can. I want this video to succeed, not only for my own benefit, but also for the legacy of the mangaka and the animators behind its adaptation. I like using this channel to spread the word on creators that either need the extra support or have deeply touched me on a personal level. I think when I look at it like that, it'll be a lot easier for me to keep going. Not every video will succeed, but that's fine, as long as I can accomplish that goal. I finally know for certain that this is a YouTube channel I want to keep uploading to. It doesn't have to be always, but as long as I do, I think I'll be fulfilled. As always, the support of my patrons is massively appreciated. Being the lost 19-year-old that I am, all the money I receive from donations means more to me than you could imagine. As such, I'd love to give a big thank you to my Phantom tier patrons Mystic Owl, Jesse, and Squizzy, and my Confidant tier patrons Regimania, Plasma, Eternum, and Ghoul. If you want amazing benefits such as a private Discord server, over 300 scrapped video ideas, 500 unlisted videos, early access to all of my videos, previews for upcoming videos, and my entire Google Drive, you can find it on Patreon. I also have a third tier that no one's bought yet, so perhaps you could be the first name there. While donations are the best way to keep the channel going, views, likes, and comments help a ton as well. No matter which of these people you happen to be, I thank you for watching the video, and I'll see you all next time.